The performance philosophy has been created to inspire individuals to be the best version of themselves and to educate parents and kids who are beginning their journey through sport. Our podcast will introduce you to individuals who have had a variety of experiences through professional sport and the lessons they've learned along the way. I would like to introduce you to our first guest today, Keith Barr, also known by his friends as Mr. Hollywood. Keith started his professional footballing career with Newcastle United before starting a successful wealth management company, Strategic Wealth Solutions. Keith, thanks for joining us. Talk us through your earliest memory of football.
So thanks for having me, Kurt. Looking forward to doing this. My earliest memory of football is not so much with a team, it's playing with my friends in the park. I was always the youngest at my group of friends, so I was kind of like left to chase the ball when it went over the goal posts or whatever else. So it's more street football, playing in the park and having fun.
And at what age did you start taking it a bit more seriously?
It's a bit different now. So I'm sure most parents will relate. Like, you know, there's fun fours, fun fives.
There's a progression there.
We obviously that's fairly new. From our end, I'm sure you were probably the same. We never really started playing football until under 10s, and then we had 2 seasons at under 10s. So my first season at under 10s was more a bit of fun. I was always a year younger than everyone else at that stage as well, so it wasn't very good. And then from about 10, 11 onwards, I started to realise that I was okay. And then
you think playing against kids that were older than you helped your development?
Oh, for sure. Like, for sure. I mean, the kids were 2-3 years older than me, and some of the dads at the team we taken were there who were 2-3 years older than me and used to kick you and rough you up. And
did that make you have to think quicker or use...
Aye, I absolutely think quicker, but also learn to kick them back.
Use your body.
Use your body or my feet. So, no, I think it definitely helped. I think... playing with friends as well, for some reason I always feel you're more competitive sometimes against your friends because you don't want to win, and it doesn't get taken into competitive games, you know, when you're playing. But for me, it was probably about 11 I started to get picked up by other teams, and then you start to take things a bit more seriously.
So what was the first team that you went to that did start taking it serious and you realised your potential and you started pushing yourself a bit more?
My dad took my first team, and he was, I don't know if you'll ever watch this or not. He was savage. He says he wasn't, and he says that I'm too hard on my kids now, which is the complete hypocrisy of that, to be honest with you. So I think for me, when I was at under 10, my dad was hard on me, and he was really tough on me, and I look back and I'm thankful for that. So in terms of me taking it serious, I think it's driven by your environment.
What was his main things? Did he want work ethic or?
Absolutely, work ethic, work hard.
Is that the main point you used to get across? Or?
I think kids are always going to have talent, aren't they? If you've got talent, you've got talent. You can work on talent, but naturally you have ability. For example, your coordination's good, or your balance. You can run with balance. You can dribble with the ball. For me, it was always making sure that you are fully focused. It was always a team thing as well for me. I mean, I was always, even at a young age, I used to play up front and I scored a lot of goals, but it was always, for me, I always took great value in assist and helping my team. And my dad was always work hard, support your team, and give your best. And he always used to say, just dominate as much as you can, you know, vocally with the ball and things like that. So I think from 10 onwards, realising that I was okay, you were pushed by, I don't know what, you and I chat about parents and the influence they have on your lives, and my dad always been tough on me. I always felt was helpful.
Yeah, I think getting the balance right, isn't it? So you look at the most successful athletes, I think a lot of them have had one thing in common, and that's parents that have driven them to be the best version of themselves. You look at Tiger Woods, Serena Williams, and I think it's trying to get the balance right between being too overbearing, but pushing your kids and giving them the right sort of skill set to be successful.
I agree. I mean, I think there's a balance, because you could score 3 goals and come in and say you use your left foot twice in that game. You need to use your left foot more. I mean, it's probably valid constructive criticism, but at the same time, it is nice. And with my dad being my coach on, you know, in my earlier years of playing football, even in my latter years, I still look for kind of, even when I was in my 20s and 30s, you still look for validation of your dad in terms of your performance, which is, you wonder why, because you're like, I don't give a, but it's probably coming from the earlier years.
And you've got a growth mindset though, so it's one of the ones where you're continually trying to improve. Even as you're getting older, I still feel that's part of the, because I was the same with my dad. After games, I'd speak to him and say, what do you think I've done well, what do you think I need to improve on? Because I think it's natural that you want to improve as a person, as a player.
I think just even chatting, like, I think parents are a huge influence in their kids' career. For example, don't put too much pressure on the kid. If your kid's good, then let them be good and let them be in an environment where they can do that. But I never felt pushed, and that was the one thing I would say I'm thankful for looking back in hindsight, because you don't really realise what your parents do for you until you're probably in your mid-20s. But I was never pushed, and
So it was your decision to be there, your decision to
absolutely,
work hard. Yeah,
absolutely. And you were given feedback, and you always say, if you don't want to be here, don't be here. So I was given a choice, but I was also given, I was given, I don't know what the right word to use here is, expectations. If you have that choice, and you need to deliver it. At this, otherwise, just go and play with your mates and kick up at the park again.
It's funny you said that. I think that's a massive factor, the fact the kids should want to be there. Like, as soon as the parents start getting overbearing, over demanding, that's when the kids don't enjoy it and they resent it and they don't want to be there. Where I think as a parent, all you can do is support and try and make sure that it's, at the end of the day, the kids need to problem solve for themselves.
I mean, you look at it now though, I mean, when we were older and playing in teams, how many people turned up that tried half-arsed? And then I would always say, if you don't want to be here, don't be here. Don't turn up. If you're going to turn up, if you're going to drive halfway across town and sit through traffic, you might as well give your all when you're there. Otherwise, what's the point? So I think, going back, I think the influence that parents, in terms of when you start to take it serious, I think for me, the driver was my dad, and then it's also setting your own standards. And I think that's something that, if I'm honest, leading into life is something that I still try and follow now.
When was your first experience of going with a professional team? I say it's professional, your sort of youth setup. When was the first step into that sort of environment?
So it was Hibs.
And what age were you at that point?
10.
Right.
So we used to train, he actually become a junior manager. It was a guy called Jimmy McLaughlin. And I remember we used to play at the AstroTurf at Meadowbank.
Right.
And I don't know if you remember the AstroTurf at Meadowbank, it was like concrete.
It was a hockey.
It was a hockey pitch, that was it. And he used to thunder the ball in at you, like absolutely zip it in at you. And for me, my first job was good, so he'd always use that as an example. And I still remember it. What was that? I don't want to give away how many years ago that was, but I was 10.
And do you think going into that age is the right age to go in? Do you think it was too young? In hindsight, looking back?
Looking back, and this is going to sound a bizarre answer, it depends. So I went there and there was 2 or 3 of my mates that went with me.
Right.
And I enjoyed it. And I wasn't forced to leave my team, my boys club team, where all my real mates were. And I was also fortunate that I got kept on every year. So I never really had to deal with rejection, because every year, I remember I went to Hearts as well. So in these days, back in the olden days, you could play for as many pro youth teams. It wasn't pro youth at the time, but it was professional teams.
So you still play with your boys club, and you could also go and train with the pro youth teams.
But you could actually play with 2 or 3 pro youth teams. Right. I was playing with Hearts, Hibs, Rangers, and you were also playing with your school. You were playing with your boys club, and so I think for me, I don't know how I'd have dealt with rejection early. I don't know how I would have dealt with it. I think when you're in that situation, I wasn't forced to be in that situation. I wanted to be there. But I think now, I remember, for example, going to Hearts, and you used to go through the back entrance of Hearts. I know you were there as well. Don't know if the door's still there towards where the school was. And at the end of every season, you got handed a letter, and you'd walk out in the car park, and you'd be sitting with your mate, and you'd open up your letter, and the letter told you whether you were or were not accepted back. And I always used to think, you're sitting with your mate, and your mate opens up the letter, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm no coming back. What's your letter?" And it puts you in a really uncomfortable position. And I think there's far better ways looking back.
Yeah, to make it a bit more personal.
Don't think I regret it, because I was still able to play with my friends. And just my opinion, I still think you should always be able to play with your friends. But I know times have changed.
I think they should be enjoying it at young ages as long as they can. It'll get serious quick enough if you're good enough. And I think if you're talented, you'll get picked up regardless of where you're at.
Couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. I think for me, I've got my wee boy Rory, and I've no desire for him to play pro youth. I mean, eventually, if he's good enough and it's natural and it happens, then fine, I've no problem with it. But to push him into a pro youth environment just now, where they're turning over numbers, and let's be honest, I don't know, pro youth will ever listen to this. They throw a net out for 50 kids on the basis that 2 are going to make it, and the 48 are a supporting act for them. That's the truth. We used to train at Durham, and I was always fitter. That was the one thing I remember. I could run longer. I wouldn't say I was faster, but I could certainly run longer than everyone else. So I was playing in midfield, and I think, if I'm totally honest, I don't think I was anywhere near the most talented there in terms of ability, but I worked harder, and I felt I worked harder than everyone, and that can take you. That can take you places if your work rate and your ethic and your desire. We chat about this all the time, desire. And I think desire's lost on a lot of people. But I mean, even up to the age of probably 17, 18, if I got beat, I'd still almost be in tears at the end of a game. So angry that I got beat. And I just feel maybe...
Where do you reckon that comes from, desire? Do you reckon it is in terms of the fact you were brought up with your dad telling you to have good work ethic, basically control the controllables, make sure you want to win, make sure you want to compete? Or do you reckon that...
Maybe. I'm also one of three boys, so desires that you always want to win. I mean, we were in a competitive house.
Yeah.
And my two brothers, if we're talking fights, I'm 420-0 undefeated against them. So I think there wasn't many second prizes for me in that house. So, but even in football and stuff, I should also probably add at this stage I'm the oldest as well. But I think it's a competitive house. I think growing up with one of three boys, you're never going to get beat.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's a bit of a macho mentality. So I think it's all of that, to be honest. Plus, also, I think some of it just comes from within. I think sometimes you're competitive by nature sometimes, or you're not. You're quite passive.
Mm-hmm. And do you reckon that's something you can change?
I think it's interesting because when we take kids' teams, I think to a point you can change. I do. I think you can be coached, and I think you can be encouraged, or you can be driven by a positive influence like a coach or whatnot. But I think when the voices stop, are you going to continue it? And I think a lot of that does have to come within. Yeah. I don't know what you're...
No, I agree. I think that comes from discipline, and the fact like it's all fine and well training within the training environment when you're with your coaches. But what do you do the rest of the time when you're by yourself? Do you eat the right things? Do you do additional training? Do you do your strength conditioning? Do you work on sort of tactical elements of the game, technical? Are you doing pretty much everything you can do to become the best version of yourself?
I completely agree. I mean, now I'm the biggest hypocrite ever. I mean, I remember on a Saturday we used to watch Baywatch, Gladiators, and then we'd go and get fish supper. That was my Saturday routine.
I think education's a big part of that though, because I'm the similar. When you look back, like nobody was like if you look how much the game's changed in terms of even like sports science, like players nowadays are complete athletes. Like they've got everything to make them the best version of themselves. Where I think when you were growing up, like I know nutrition wise, I knew nothing until I was 16. And then when I signed with Hearts, it was like I got a nutritional plan. Yep. And on the back of that, I followed that to a T.
Yep.
So I had the discipline to follow it, but it was the fact I was handed it and said, this is what you should be doing.
It is. It's absolutely discipline. I think going back, the world's changed though, and we've got to acknowledge it. So what I had done, or what my dad done with me when I was 14, 15, 16, whatever it was, and like, you had a tough weekend. Bear in mind then, and I do get a wee bit frustrated with this sometimes when people say, oh man, he's tired, or he's, it does, I'm like, because you and I would play a school football game 90 minutes on a Saturday morning. We'd go down and play with our boys club for 90 minutes in the Saturday afternoon, and then we'd get up the next day and play 90 minutes pro youth. So we're playing 3 90-minute games at a weekend. Yep. And I think I never ever, I don't know about you, I can never once remember feeling tired.
No, I think I can remember games where I was a wee bit when you get a bit tired, you maybe a bit more emotional and angry or whatever. Like I remember that, because I think that's to do with like your sleep and are you getting enough rest. I do think it's important. But I do agree in terms of the fact that was few and far between. I can remember like probably one incident where I was maybe tired for a game. The rest of the time it was...
But for how many games?
Aye, exactly.
Hundreds.
Yeah.
So and I think now I think I was always told that you're not tired, just get on with it. And I think a lot of it's mentally, and I know this is stuff you and I chat about as part of the performance element side as well, that the mental aspect of playing is so important. Like physically, you need to put yourself in a good physical place. Now, particularly with nutrition, sleep. I mean, how often do we deal with kids, and you can tell instantly if they've not had a good night's sleep.
You can tell by the warm-up if they've went to their bed at a reasonable time, just by how they turn up, their body language, like they look like they're full energy, and again, emotion. That's the biggest thing. I think when kids haven't enough sleep, you can see the fact they get emotional. So if things aren't going their way, they get upset, or they find it harder to problem solve. And
never mind kids, you get emotional when you sleep.
True. Well, point.
No, I think again, I do believe a lot of this comes from parents, though, and I'm only saying that based on my experience. So, like, with my wee one, if he wants a sleeper on a Saturday, I'm not keen on it. Or if they do have it, I'm like, right, will we get to your bed for, I don't know, my parenting, it's going to come into question here, but 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Like, you need to be in bed for 9. Might be 8, might be 10, I don't know. But I think getting them into good routines, so I'll say to them to get up and like, and it's more a mindset thing for them. I was like, you get up and we give you toast and we'll give you 2 scrambled eggs.
Yep.
And then after that, we'll give you a drink of water. And I'll tell them that makes you super strong and that'll make you've got loads of energy now. Look at the sleep you had. So you're building them up to a place where mentally, if I say, you got rubbish sleep and, you're a Cocoa Pop, so that'll not help you run.
Yep.
So mentally, you're planting seeds of doubt in your kid's mind.
100%. Positivity.
Positivity. You've got to put them in a good place. I do think maybe...
It's the same context with who they're playing. That's one of the things that frustrates me. Like, it shouldn't matter who you're playing against. Like, if you focus on yourself and control your preparation, like you said, like your mindset, doing all the right things before a game.
Aye.
It shouldn't matter who you're playing. You should be confident in yourself when you turn into a game. I find a lot of parents building it up to kids in terms of what they should be focused on themselves. They shouldn't. That's an external event. Like, they can't control their position. All they can control is themselves.
I completely agree. I mean, how often do you hear kids go, we're playing such and such, are they good? And your response, I can tell with what you said, your response was, I don't care. I don't care what they are. I don't care. They're big. Who cares? Like, I don't care how big they are. So I think that, I know doing what you're doing in terms of the performance philosophy, I think that the biggest part that, and I keep referring to parents, I think parents could be the biggest, as our dads were in our lives, the biggest positive influence that they could be on their kids, the most important influence that they could have on their kids. And I think being positive for them, also not, we speak about not pushing them, preparing them properly. And listen, I'm not saying they're playing Champions League football here, but if you're going to do something, do it properly.
I commit to it.
Commit to it.
Yeah. Totally agree. So based on the players that you played with and against, what separated them?
I think it was mindset, honestly. Looking back, we've chatted about this because we never really speak too much about what we've done in our football careers. But I think for me, in the youth team I was in, there was 3 or 4 boys who went to a really, really good level. There was Shola Ameobi, who went on to play, I don't know how many games for Newcastle. Gary Caldwell. There was Michael Chopra. He went on to £1 million moves. There was Peter Ramage.
So see, when you were playing with him, when your first sort of memory of them, were they technically way advanced to everybody else, or was it their mindset that separated them from everybody else?
So the one thing I would say they've done very well is they've always done the simple things well. And I think in most games, if you can get the basics right, which was work hard, first touch right, scan, be aware of what's around you, then the game becomes easier. I think it wasn't until later on that you start to realise the mindset. They were very, very, very resilient. And looking back now, one of the things that I wish I had more of was being more resilient. Because when you're in Scotland, or see you're at your boys' club and then you move to your boys' club and you're a big fish in a small pond, and you move to your pro youth team in Scotland, and let's just say you're a big fish in a small pond there. You then go to a bigger pond when you go down south, and all of a sudden you're a wee bit like,
there's players for all over the world.
What's this? Literally, I mean, I remember I was in my first year and I got moved up to train with the first team. And I was playing, I think I was maybe playing right midfield then because I was a wee bit too skinny. You can't believe that now. But I was a wee bit too skinny. I played right mid, and I think his name was, or he was right or left mid, and he was in, so I was 19 at the time, decide Hugo Viana, I'm sure that was his name, from a Portuguese team for something like 8 million quid. And you're just like, what's the point? And but it's true. And then, but what that, if you think about that mentally, right, you're pushing forward, then someone gets signed for $9 million. Mentally, how are you going to deal with that? Was these guys, they dealt with it, and they never cared. And my regret for me is not being more ruthless, not being more confident in my own ability. Eventually starting to second guess yourself. You do get maybe left at the team, and then straight away you start doubting yourself even more. And I think for me, that was the biggest regret for me. But I think, going back on your point, these guys who done really well, they'd done the basics really well. They worked hard. What I would say, they communicated. They were probably the best communicators. They were leaders. They were the best communicators in the team. Communicate way better than what I ever did. And obviously they were good players. But mentally, they would deal with anything.
You say mentally in terms of how you deal with setbacks and sort of failure. Do you reckon that's the fact there's lack of education on that? Like, failure was deemed, I think, when we were playing as a negative thing, where if you turn it on its head and say it's a positive because you get to learn from it, you would have a much more positive response as opposed to, oh my God, this person's taking my place in the team.
100%. But it's it's a different world now. Like back then, if failure was bad. Like you weren't good enough.
You used to take it so
you weren't good
personally.
enough. I mean, I'll be honest. Probably a lot came from my dad. If you didn't do something, you failed, and if you failed, you weren't good enough.
Aye.
And that's probably also where Paul's influence now. So again, I refer back to like we're working with kids, and the one thing I love working with kids now is you care so much about every kid that you work with, and it's about giving back and trying to pass on the experiences that you wish you could have done differently because you can't get time back. So I think for me, we didn't encourage the kids to fail, but we tell the kids that failing is part of the learning process. So I wish, with the sports psychology and everything and the things that you're doing just now, I wish I had someone then to say, just because you never played today, it doesn't make you a bad player. It means this is what you should do. And what we'd encourage the kids to do was go away and work harder. And I keep saying this to parents now, like if your kid gets moved a team, it's not that your kid's a bad player, it's allowing your kid to develop at the stage that he is at this moment in time. My advice to and I keep referring to parents again, but my advice to that parent would be, tell your kid to get his head down, work hard. I mean, what example is it to spit a dummy out and leave?
Do you know, I think that's a factor. Too many parents have got, they think short term as opposed to long term development.
But absolutely, I mean, you look at the things that are being put in place now with the kids' teams that we take, it is about becoming better versions of themselves. And I know you said that in your introduction. I'm not sure about Mr. Hollywood in your introduction, by the way, but it's becoming a better version of themselves. But that doesn't happen over a week. It doesn't happen over a month. It doesn't happen over a game. It's slowly building the kids up to, and I know we're referring a lot to kids here, but it's important that...
Aye, but that's the who you're going to be as an adult. That's just why I enjoy this, and it's one of the ones, like you said, it's the lessons learned. I think it's all stems to habits, like, because we do talk to the kids a lot about long-term development, and if they can build the right habits now, they're just going to get better and better and better and better, and it's like, it compounds, eh?
I totally agree. I think a lot of the like dealing with resilience and like life isn't just one upward linear line. It's like it's a roller coaster, and it's ups and downs, and it's not so much when you're on the up realizing you made it, and on the down you're a failure. It's realizing it's part of the journey. And I think I don't know about you. I don't take my own advice sometimes, but when I'm saying that to people, it's right. But when it happens to you, you're in your own bubble, and I always explain you're in your own bubble, and you don't see outside your bubble.
But I think the difference now is you bounce back quick.
You try.
Aye.
Because you've built up resilience.
Yep, exactly. And once you start learning to deal with that and try and have a positive outcome, it just naturally, and like you say, you do have setbacks, it's just how you respond to it.
I think it's so true. I mean, we'll deal with kids now, and they'll make a mistake, and you just see their reaction. It makes me sad that they're so sad at their reaction. I mean, you're talking 10 and 11-year-old kids making mistakes, playing football for 3 years and beating themselves up. I mean, how many, I think to master a skill, you have to spend something like
10,000 hours.
Oh, it's even. I think it's 100,000 hours. It's something ridiculous. And you've got kids who are training twice a week, expecting to play crossfield balls and beating themselves up over it. It's sad because, that's where you put the arm around the shoulder, and what we do, and encourage them and say that that's okay. It doesn't make you a bad player. And I think I'm going round about back to the point for Newcastle, but I think for me that's a strength that I see: communication, leadership, resilience. And I think resilience is huge, like, not just for football, but for whatever they're going to do in life.
So would you say that was your lowest point then, when you realised that sort of, when you started being out the team? And
I think it was difficult because I had I don't know if you're going to ask this later if I'm going over it, but I had an unbelievable manager in my first couple of years there. He was unbelievable. Like, even now, I'm still scared of him. But respect them.
That's what I was going to say. Respect. I think the best coaches, they're honest. They're honest with you, and you respect them. And there needs to be an element, I think, a little fear factor there for the fact but again, it comes down to respect. Because as soon as that goes out the window, people naturally just start pushing boundaries, and then the intensity of the session may drop, and the demands then drop, and I think it's important that you set the standards high and you make sure players keep that level.
Do you know what was also good though? He was a player himself, so he used to join in the sessions, and I think you built up respect because he was also a good player, and you respected him because he could do it. So,
see, on that, do you think, in terms of what makes a really good coach, do you think it makes a big difference if they've played at a decent level and they've got that playing experience?
I think it helps. I mean, you look at Mourinho. Mourinho still played at an okay level, maybe no Champions League level or whatnot.
I think he was at 4th division sort of
Yeah,
level.
he's still an okay player. He can still strike a ball and be, disrespectful there. I think it definitely helps. I think for me, I always looked to someone. If someone was asking me to do something, I would always want to know, like, can you do it? Can you do it?
And I agree. Like,
and maybe kids are different now. I don't know. But
I think I think in terms of knowledge, it's like anything, the more hours you put in and the more you read and the more you study, the better you're going to become. But I do think if you think how many hours you dedicate to playing football from a kid, and if you've played at a half decent level all the way through, that's hard to replicate that many hours in terms of like committing to something and learning from it and getting your setbacks, because you can put yourself in the player's position. But I think if you've not got that playing experience, it's very difficult to understand how players are feeling because you've never been there yourself.
Aye, absolutely. I think if you're playing, you should always kind of, even for us, when I join in, I want to win. I still want to win. I'm playing against 11-year-olds and I'm flying into people, and one or two of the parents are laughing on the sidelines. I was like, but you're leading by example. If you play at a high tempo, the kids play at a high tempo.
100%. When did you decide that you didn't want to pursue football as a career? Like, what was the turning point where you were like, you dedicated so much of your life into getting yourself into Newcastle? At what point did you think, right, that I don't want to do this anymore? I
think what people don't understand is what a brutal industry it is. You see the good news and you see all the Premiership players, but I would say for everyone, my figures are completely flawed here, but for everyone, there's probably 20,000 who never, or whatever it might be, 10,000. And it's just such a horrible sport to be in. And
that's what I don't think parents realise though. Like, seeing my dealings with parents and trying to get their kids' environments in terms of a pro youth environment, I don't think they realise how hard it actually is. They think it's glamorised, but it's a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication, a lot of travelling, and it's one of the ones where still the chances of you making it to elite level where you're going to be financially secure are like slim to none.
I mean, Kerr, I'll be honest, I was fortunate. I mean, even out of the kids that I grew up with, there was only 2 or 3 of us in my whole region that ended up doing what I'd done. Now, don't get me wrong, 1 or 2 went on to play professional through whatever reason, like Craig Gordon, for example. But most don't. And I just think, like, I was fortunate. I got kept on every year. I got a professional contract. I got, and I don't think I'd wish that on my child. I think the environment is ruthless. I think I'm an employer myself now. I think employment law is non-existent in football. You can say and do whatever you want, and that's it. Tough, and you're out the door. I just think it's just such a brutal industry to be in, that if your kid isn't, come back to my point, resilient, I'll be honest, it could ruin them. So for me, getting to the point when I left Newcastle, at that point I had 2 ankle operations as well. So half my ankle had sort of caved in. Which never, I wouldn't say stopped me playing football, but it was start, stop at a really important phase in my career. And I came up and played at St Johnstone and done I think it was a 2-month or something loan at St Johnstone. And I went to a couple of like part-time teams and I never enjoyed it. And I was like, what am I doing? I'm driving to like...
Do you not think it's hard though? You're going in an environment from Newcastle where it's probably there's really high standards. The standard of players you're playing with is really good. I think people don't realise dropping down the levels, it's actually harder at times because players don't do what you're used to players doing. They don't see that bit of movement, they don't see that pass. So you're maybe making runs, you don't get it. You're maybe playing a ball and an air expecting them to make a move and they don't. It actually gets harder. I don't think people realise that.
It's exactly that. It's putting the ball I always used to put the ball 5 yards in front of someone. So when you talk about technique, you assume it's your first touch. Technique is being able to wait a pass so that someone can walk onto that pass. And you put 5 yards in front of someone, will just stop and look at the ball roll at the park. Just sitting going, what are you doing? He's looking at me going, what are you doing? And your teammates are going, what are you doing? And you're like, what are you doing?
You're trying to set him up.
What are you doing? I'm trying to set him up to run at the ball. So, but I think it is that as well. But I also think, like, just to kind of get to your point, is like, I just realised in the end, I was like, what am I trying to do here? Like, what's the end goal? And I was like, you would have been going from club to club, and I always, looking back now, I always played best when I felt part of a changing room. Now, eventually you would be part of a changing room, but every team that I played well in, we were all mates. And then I was going from club to club, and then they were already mates, and you were coming in as the outsider. And
I think with lower league as well, there's that much changeover. Like, because everyone's fighting for it. Again, it comes down to money, contracts. So it's like everyone's going where they can get the most money, and they're sort of jumping about clubs. And I think that, like you said, that stability-wise, it's hard to sort of build relationships unless there's a core management team that have got a core set of players that have been there for a period of time.
It's also core values, like what's the club standing for? Are they stamping out stuff that they see happening? And I think now, when I was hearing a story that the clubs don't employ superstars now if they're bad eggs or bad apples for the rotten apples for the changing rooms. They look at the personality they play, their work ethic, how they work with people. And looking back for me, I kind of realised that maybe that was lack of resilience as well. But I also just thought at this stage, like, you've given your whole career to football, and then you're kind of going into changing room and sitting there in it for the first 2 weeks. Nobody'd speak to you really until you. And then I was just kind of like, what am I doing? Like, I don't know why I'm doing this. Like, maybe a lack of resilience for me, maybe a lack of, they've just lost a wee bit of passion for I think, full time. But I also was taking a long-term view, and I was like, I don't see me very few, hitting the heights in the Premier League. I mean, maybe jump for, I don't know, who could you say, Airdrie to, no offence to Airdrie or Kilmarnock or Dundee, but what are you doing? You're just...
And at the end of the career, you're still going to be looking to start another career.
Be 35, looking for a new career. So I actually saw at early doors that I think there's more to life than trying to... And it's letting go of your personality, I think, when you've viewed your whole life as a footballer, and then all of a sudden... There's also... That's the word I'm looking for, identity. And I think there's also a bit of embarrassment. Oh, you're not playing football anymore. Why are you not playing football? And eventually, when you were out and you were in the town, you'd have that conversation every time. So how's the football going? And
do you not feel it's a bubble though? I feel once you're in it, you think it's more important than what it actually is, and then when you step out of it, you realise that it's not all it's sort of cracked up to be.
I also think nobody cares as much as you think they care.
Yeah.
But I also think there's people that are going to want to shoot you down. What I'd always realise is I'd go away and I'd hear like such and such says you weren't this, or you, and I'd be like, why do they care? So it's learning for kids. And the one thing I would say, if I know we keep referring to kids or anyone at any age, is like, when you've got a place that you enjoy yourself, and you've got a place that your friends and it's fun, don't take that for granted. Because I've been in enough changing rooms to see that you will get the best out yourself as a kid if the values of the club are good, and the environment of the club is good, and the changing room is good, and you're friends with the people on your team. That doesn't happen at every team. You might think it does, but there's bonds that you make.
I don't think you know a good environment until you see a bad environment.
Until you leave one, exactly.
And that's a big part of the problem. Like you, like you said, you don't enjoy it as much as what you should, because you don't know. You only know what you know until you experience a bad changing room or a sort of team of bad culture and bad values. Then you realise what you sort of had before.
I couldn't agree more.
What advice would you give young athletes if they're sort of young athletes starting out in their career? What advice would you give them?
Work hard. I think you might think you're working hard, but are you being totally honest with yourself? I mean, I'll see kids now and they'll say, I've done my best, and they're coming off and their hair's still in place and there's no ounce of sweat. And it frustrates me. So you've got to be honest with yourself, but be honest with yourself in terms of the effort and work that you're putting in to anything you're doing. If you're turning up to anything, be accountable. That's essentially it. You've got to be accountable for your own performance, but also for your effort and your work rate. Your work rate's so important, and I don't care if it's football, and I suppose when we're taking kids now, I don't care if it's football, if it's work, and I employ people now in my business. If they just turn up and they work hard, I don't care if they make mistakes. As long as they care and they work hard, I think they'll do well. And if they work harder than everyone else, I don't know what it might be. It might be swimming, it might be football, it might be golf. I think they'll have a good chance of being successful, because ability gets you so far, but it'll not get you all the way. If you don't work hard, ability will take you to a certain level, and if people rely on ability and don't apply themselves in the right way or try and become better versions through diet and nutrition, through
strength conditioning,
then they're eventually going to, the other kids are going to catch up with them.
It's funny you say that. See, in terms of different people have got, you say about work ethic, I think people think if they've got hard work ethic when they're in their session, but they're only doing maybe 2 sessions a week. And like you said, what's going to separate them and other kids trying to achieve their dreams is the ones that's putting the work in away from their organised sessions, that are doing stuff in the morning, like you said, their strength conditioning work, like what they're putting in their bodies in terms of what they're eating. And it's, for me, it's a big part of having a plan and being consistent with that.
I think the plans, but that you hit the nail on the head. I mean, hard work, don't get me wrong, when you turn up, you should give 100%, but that's not the full picture. I mean, you and I we're not getting any younger. We probably train harder than we trained through our early 20s. Well, I know I am. I don't know about you.
And again, though, I think it's because we're consistent, though. Like, you've got a plan that you stick to, I've got a plan that I stick to. And I think even the days you don't feel like it, you know you've got to do it that day, so you get it done. And I think that's why I think people that don't have plans, that's why they tend to struggle with motivation, because they'll be motivated one day and do maybe a gym session. But if they've not got anything else planned out, Tuesday, I don't really fancy it. But if you've got that in your plan, you need to commit to it, you need to get it done.
Yeah, I think for me, like, why I do what I do as well is I want to set a good example for my kids, you know, and they can see that.
I think that's really important, kids seeing their parents exercise. What advice would you give parents of young athletes?
I think I've probably covered quite a lot of it, actually. I think don't push them. I already see I work with under 10s, under 11s, but even over the last 2 or 3 years, I've seen parents push their kids into environment, and I worry that they're pushing kids into an environment for themselves, not for the kid. Particularly kids who've had fun and they're moving teams every season, and they're at 6 clubs in and they're 10 years old. It blows my mind. So don't push your kid. If your kid's having fun, let them have fun. And there's only going to be a limited period of time that your kid's going to be able to have fun. Now, the kids that we do are 9, 10, 11 years old. As soon as it gets to 14, 15, the fun does drop. You'll still have fun, but there's pressure fun, because you're now entering Scottish Cups, you're now going away to places. I think encourage your kid to work hard, tell them it's okay to make mistakes, but hypocrisy here, try not to be too hard on them. But I'd always say balance it. Be honest with your kid. Don't tell your kid they've done well when they haven't, but also balance it with praise, and just be there and support them, I think. But kids shouldn't hear stuff that makes them feel better. To help Ian and I in our coaches role, sometimes to coach people properly, you've got to be honest, and people don't like honesty.
And I think if it's done in the right manner, constructive, I think you can tell the difference between a coach that does care about his kids and a coach maybe saying it in a sense, I'd say bullying, because you do see some coaches say things and it's delivered negatively, and it can't have a positive impact at all.
It blows my mind, like, sometimes, certainly at young ages, the desire to win games. So I know we're talking about winning mentality, but winning mentality in an environment where there are no winners or losers, there are no leagues, there are no cups, you want to win the game still, don't get me wrong, but from a coach's perspective, it should be about developing. And I'm also going on your point here, from a parent's perspective, it should be about 100%. Developing. So if they're getting beat and they're smashing, and it tackles fairly, and they're running about the park, and they're trying to, what's the word? Not like dominate the game or influence the game. That's the attribute you want to see. So if they get beat 3-0 and they've done that, and they've maybe lost 2 bad goals, that's exactly, for me as a parent, the attributes you'd want to nurture in your children. It's not, my dad always used to say to me, you find out who the good players are when you're getting beat.
100%. I think when things aren't going your way, who's the players that step up, work harder, encourage their teammates, act as a leader, and get the team going again?
But think about that in football, but think about that in business. Imagine you've got someone in your team when things are going wrong, and then you get swept away in negativity, and you get swept away in self-pity, and you get swept. And imagine someone who's like, no, I'm going to change it. And I think that's a lot of the attributes that from what you're doing and your work now is you're taking kids in that environment, but it's the mindset you're teaching them. So the mindset is transferable to whatever environment that they go in. And that's what you're trying to teach kids here. Not so much be a Premier League footballer, because let's be honest, you're lucky if one does. How many kids? Hundreds.
Well, thanks for your time, Keith. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'll see you this afternoon.